What is up, everybody? It's your boy, Pigskin Pete. Happy Monday to everybody. Hope everybody had an amazing and fantastic and an enjoyable, safe 4th of July holiday this past weekend. I made it through. I still got all my digits. Didn't blow my hands off. Anyway, topic of discussion for today's video is an idea or several ideas that are being kicked around and, as far as I can tell, are being seriously considered as it relates to how we will see this year's or this season's college football season play out. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. First of all, you guys know what you know who I care about, right? I'm a college football fan. I want to see college football in any way, shape, or form. Don't get me wrong. I won't be that picky. But some of these scenarios that are being laid out, I'm not a big fan of as it relates to Clemson. And the reason I can only speak on Clemson is because I'm not going to pretend like I'm smart enough to know every player and every roster and every situation and every game scenario, out of conference, in conference, with every other team in the country. I'm just not going to pretend to do that. I do know how this will affect Clemson, though, and it's not good. Anything short of a full 12-game season played in the fall is not good in Clemson's case. It's not good for them. Because of the conference they play in and because of the amount of NFL draft picks that they're going to have after this season is over. Most notably Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Amari Rodgers, just to name a few of the top tier guys there. And there's many more too. But there's different scenarios. So the first scenario we're going to look at here is a short season. This is being proposed and seriously considered. What do you mean by short season? Well, they're saying a short season would be we start the season 4 weeks late. So instead of having the season start hypothetically the first week of September, it would be the first week of October, and they would start the short season from them. In that scenario, what they would do is they would eliminate the 4 non-conference games for teams in the ACC, right? So we just play our 8 conference games like we normally do. But we just start a month later. First of all, for obvious reasons, this is bad for Clemson because the perception of and just the overall strength of the conference is not great right now. So for them to only play Georgia Tech, Virginia, and then the other 6 teams in the ACC Atlantic Division would not bode well for them any sort of postseason talk. Unless they blew all these teams out by 70 points, 50 points, whatever, 40, 50 points, and just dominated them like they've been doing of late. But even then, can you really make a case for them if you have a Georgia team that's got 1 loss, or an LSU team that's got 1 loss, or a Florida team that's got 1 loss, Alabama team that's undefeated, Ohio State's undefeated or 1 loss, Oregon or Oklahoma? You go down the list, there's only 4 spots in the playoffs if they have a playoff in this scenario. So the conference only thing for Clemson fans that think that's a good idea, no, does not benefit them in any way, shape, or form. Not at all. Plus, let's be honest here. How many tickets would they sell if they even have fans in the stands to see them beat Boston College by 30 points in the first half? And I don't even know. I'm not even looking at the schedule here. I don't even know if they play. I think they play Boston College and Death Valley this year, but it's just an example. So to me, it's devastating for a team like Clemson. Of course, I'll still watch. I'm not one of these people that's sitting on my soapbox here saying, oh, if they do this silly stuff and they shorten the season or they do a split season, I'm not watching. No, I'm watching. I'm watching. But it won't be the same. Just won't be the same. The second scenario, and this scenario to me is completely absurd and won't work. This is the idea of a split season. What do you mean by split season? Well, a split season would mean they play 6 games from October to December or November or whatever it is. They'll play half of the season in the fall and then resume the other half of the season in the spring. And it's really not the spring. It's really January and February. So I guess what they would do is they'd start in October. So they'd have games in October and November, take the month of December off, and resume the second half of the season in January and February. Well, this poses all sorts of issues, not just for Clemson, but for everybody. And some of you would say, well, this is a better scenario than what you just said, Pete, because at least you're playing all 12 games. That means Clemson will still play under Notre Dame, right? That means that Ohio State will still play Oregon, right? That means Oklahoma will still play Tennessee. All the big games out of conference that people are looking forward to seeing, they'll still play those games in this split season scenario. Well, they'll all be meaningless. They'll all be meaningless. Look, the NFL Combine is in February. The NFL is not moving the date of the Combine to curtail or to kowtow to college football's split schedule. First of all, here's the first thing you need to understand about this. The NFL plays a big part in this. This is the main reason, actually. The NFL is having a season this year, whether you believe it or not. They're going to have a season, whether there's fans there or not. They're going to have a 16-game season. They're going to have a playoff, and they're going to have a Super Bowl. It's just all there is to it. The chances of that not happening are almost zero. So the NFL is doing what they do. And as we all know, the college system is a de facto farm team for the NFL. They don't care about how good the college football season looks. They care about getting the Trevor Lawrences and the Justin Fields and the Travis Etiennes and the countless other players like those guys, the top 50 to 100 players in college football. That's who they want. They don't care what the season looks. They could give a shit if Clemson sells out a game for the next 50 years as long as they're getting the Trevor Lawrences and the Travis Etiennes out of there. That's all they care about. And that's all they should care about. These are two completely different business models and businesses, the way they're run. So in this scenario, when you've got a guy like Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne and Amari Rodgers, the ones I named earlier, and several others, and again, countless others like this across the country, I'm just talking about Clemson because I can relate to it and make it sound somewhat intelligible. If you're Trevor Lawrence or Travis Etienne, what incentive do you have to play a meaningless regular season ACC game in February? When you're about to be, if you're Trevor Lawrence, you're projected to be the first overall pick in the draft. We already see players sitting out meaningless bowl games, what they consider to be meaningless. In Georgia's case a couple of years ago, you had the top players in the team sitting out the Sugar Bowl because they said it wasn't a playoff game. Or in their mind, if it's not a playoff game, I'm not going to play in it. I'm going to go ahead and prepare for my future in the NFL draft. You can agree or disagree with it, but they're doing it, and they're doing it in higher and higher numbers every single season. So what is the incentive for Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne to strap up the shoulder pads and put the helmet on to go play Boston College in February? There is none. Because if you look at last year, for example, Tua Tagovailoa, projected to be either the first or second quarterback taken in the draft, depending on who you talk to. We all know that Walt was wrong about that. Anyway, I had to get that shot in there. Anyway, but first or second quarterback taken in the draft, Tua was projected to be. He gets injured in a regular season game at the end of the season, breaks his hip, serious injury. A lot of people say maybe he'll never play again. He may fall to the second or third round in the NFL draft. And this was back in like November, right? So this is, let's watch how I do this here. November, December, January, February, March, April, when the NFL draft is. End of April. So almost 6 months. 5 months removed from his injury, they were still talking about how far will Tua Tagovailoa fall. If it weren't for those 5 months, for Tua to have his surgery, recover from it, and convince some of these NFL teams, in particular the Miami Dolphins in this case, that he was healthy enough and he was enough of a sure bet to gamble their future on drafting him in the first round, high in the first round, top 5 picks. He might have fell to the second or third round, or maybe even went undrafted. if they didn't have that 5-month period for him to be able to prove himself and heal. So would Trevor Lawrence or Travis Etienne gamble their entire future, their next 20 years or potentially 20 years of their professional career by playing against some mediocre ACC team in February, where if they were to tear their ACL or worse, then they have zero time between then and the draft to heal and prove themselves? You can go from being the number 1 first overall pick in February to being the 5th or 6th round draft pick or undrafted in one play because of the split season. There's no incentive. Zero incentive for a top tier player. If you're a top 100 player in college football, you have no incentive to play in January, February in a regular season game. And that's the thing I'm hearing. Well, Trevor, you're saying Trevor Lawrence wouldn't play in the national championship in January? If you're saying they won't play in January, yeah, he would. He played in the national championship, but he ain't going on the road to play shit-kicking University in February. Don't try to tell me those are two of the same thing, because they're not. And I wouldn't blame them. If I was their coach, I'd advise them not to play a meaningless regular season game in February, when the combine's in February and the draft's only a couple months later. If I cared about that kid. So I don't see any benefit to this split season thing. And again, if they have a split season, I'll watch it. Yes, I'll watch it in the fall. Yes, I'll watch it in the spring if they play it. It's going to be a watered down version of football. It's not going to be what we're used to. It's not. So in short, I think that anything short of a 12-game season in the fall is a disaster for these guys. It's going to be a disaster for a lot of other teams too. I mean, in that scenario, if they play a conference-only schedule, but they still decide to do a playoff, go ahead and pencil in 3 or 4 ACC teams in there. You won't have a Big 12 team in there. You won't have a Pac-12 team in there. You won't have an ACC team in there. You might have a Big 10 team, probably Ohio State, and 3 SEC teams. If not, you'll have 4 SEC teams in there, because they're going to value the conference schedule in the SEC higher than any other conference. I mean, if that's fine, if that's what you want to watch. I mean, I prefer it to be a little bit more level playing field. Giving every conference a chance. But that's just me. That's just me. Also, here's the last thing I'll say about this that I forgot to mention. Who's to say? And when you talk about starting the season late, like skipping the month of September and starting late, what is even the point in that? You're assuming that you can see into the future and that coronavirus is not going to be as bad in October as it is in September, which is a complete guess. It might be worse in October than it is in September. So what's the point of postponing that entire month for unforeseen differences? And the same could be said for the split season. Who's to say that the coronavirus won't be worse in February than it is in December? Right? I mean, it doesn't take I'm no doctor, obviously. But it doesn't take a genius to figure out you can't tell what the future is going to look like. So why delay the inevitable is what I'm trying to say. And you can't see the future. So why try to pretend like you do? And, we're going to start it in October instead of September. So that way the numbers can be, you don't know what the numbers are going to look like then. You have no idea. No idea. Not even Dr. Fauci knows what it's going to look like in October as opposed to September. And Dr. Fauci doesn't know what it's going to look like in January as opposed to November. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Any way you slice it, bad news for Clemson. Anything short of a 12-game season, whether there's fans there or not, if they don't play 12 games, it definitely hurts Clemson's chances to be any sort of national championship conversation. Still, I'd rather watch something than nothing, sure. And I think that there's a lot of teams other than Clemson that are in a similar boat. And major teams too, not just, teams that nobody, seems to care about until they win. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on this. Bad idea. And, here's the other thing before I go. Roger Goodell and the NFL right now are sitting back in their super villain lair. This is Roger Goodell right now, twiddling his fingers in hopes that the NCAA or somebody will cancel the college football season altogether or even have a shortened season. Why? Why would that be? Because right now and for the past 50 years, college football has owned Saturdays in the United States of America, TV-wise. Every station has college football on Saturdays in the fall. No college football season or even a shortened college football season opens the door for the NFL to own the entire weekend in sports in the fall. So you have CBS, they put that 3:30 game on for the SEC teams every single Saturday, right? If there's no college football season, or if there's a gap there with 2 or 3 or 4 weeks where there's no SEC games on at 3:30 because they're not being played on Saturday, who do you think is going to swoop in there and say, hey, yeah, we know you guys normally watch all of our games on Sunday, but now what we're going to do is we're going to have games on Saturday and Sunday for the NFL. We're going to own the entire weekend. You imagine the ratings boost the NFL will get if college football does this? It would be a huge advantage for the NFL financially if the college football season was shortened or canceled. Huge. And CBS would give them that 3:30 spot to let you watch the Seahawks play the 49ers or whatever in a heartbeat. Because they need to get that money too. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts on this. I'll see you guys very soon. Have a great day. Pigskin Pete, checking out.